Hi, everyone. I'm Leah.
And I am Ezra. We are the co-executive directors of Indivisible. We're two of the lead organizers of No Kings 3, which is, just 3 weeks away. And you are listening to this and joining What's the Plan, a live Q&A about politics, strategy, organizing, whatever else is on your mind. We go through the questions and we answer them. We've got a really great discussion today. Leah, what is the plan?
Well, the status update is we are at war. A secret police continues to terrorize our communities, all directed by an authoritarian who is actively and publicly fantasizing about canceling the midterm elections. And simultaneously, we are seeing an historic wave of energy from regular Americans who are pissed off, want to do something about it, driving No Kings up numbers up higher than we have ever seen before. So let's talk about what we can do.
One thing that we can talk about is this brand new breaking news as of Thursday afternoon, which is Kristi Noem just got fired. She just got fired. You know what? We should be celebrating.
Take a minute to celebrate.
We can celebrate. And I know there's a lot of but actually, and it's not enough. And that's the natural thing that comes from us organizing. And all of it's real. There are plenty of caveats, but remember, authoritarians try to grind you down. They try to make you feel like you should have no hope. They want you to feel like they are inevitable, that they are invincible, that they cannot be pressured, that the public's opinion does not matter. And here's the news. Kristi Noem has just been fired. She's just been fired because they couldn't stand the heat. She was just too unpopular. She had violated allegedly too many laws. She had undermined allegedly the Constitution too much. She had allegedly been sleeping with one of her coworkers and allegedly been steering money from the federal government to people who were connected to her. Now, I say allegedly, I say reportedly, I say presumably. I use these caveats because I don't know. I do not know, y'all. I don't have the facts out there. What I do know is there should be investigations. That being fired is a bummer for her on this Thursday, but that's not the end of accountability for anybody who has been committing crimes and undermining the Constitution, for which there is evidence that is worth investigating. Congress should investigate. The courts should have a chance to review the evidence, and if they are convicted, then they should be sentenced. That is what comes in Kristi Noem's future. That is what should come in Kristi Noem's future. I'm under no illusion that Trump is suddenly going to have some interest in the rule of law. I'm under no illusion that the Republicans are suddenly going to start holding hearings. They're not going to do that. But the Republicans aren't going to be in control for much longer. We're going to wipe the floor with this regime in the midterms. We're going to take the House. We're going to take the Senate. And then you know what we get? One of the immediate things we get subpoena power, y'all. We get the power to actually find some facts, do some investigations, and that's what should happen. But that is in the future. For today, Kristi Noem is fired. I know Trump made some statement about her being moved somewhere, a special envoy for the Shield of the Americas. Y'all, this is bullshit. She was fired. She was moved to some other bullshit position. She is not a happy camper right now. She has been shown the door. She is out. She is no longer going to be overseeing DHS, and that is good, because Noem is awful and oversaw some of the worst atrocities of this regime over the last several months. So I want to thank the people in Minnesota right now. I really do. I think the people in Minnesota visibilized some of the worst of what DHS was doing over the course of the last several months and made it just untenable for even a would-be authoritarian regime to keep this person in power. I want to thank everybody who participated in advocacy over the course of these last several months and didn't allow this to be a 1 day or a 1 week or a 1 month story, but kept on it. I want to thank the members of Congress who listened to that congressional pressure and brought it up in the hearings this week. She's being fired after she went and testified in front of Congress. And there's one way that testimony can go. It can be just softballs, no new news made, everybody moves on, and then that's it. That's not what happened. And we should be thanking our members of Congress who actually held their feet to the fire, actually asked tough questions, and made this a really tough situation for the regime to just stay on course. As I mentioned, her being fired is not enough. It is the beginning of accountability for her, and more will come. I will also say, Trump is saying Markwayne Mullin is going to be the next DHS secretary. Markwayne Mullin's bad and should face scrutiny. I don't know how else to say it. If you think this is some kind of change in policy, that Markwayne Mullin is some kind of softy when it comes to administering DHS, that he will change what ICE is doing and CBP is doing, he's one of the most vigorous defenders of Noem and DHS out there. So the regime might be treating this as kind of a PR headache or something where you just change the person and the story moves on. Our fundamental problem is not with whatever fascist collaborator is in the office. Our problem is with the policies. Our problem is with the structure. So I think there are going to be some Republicans out there and maybe some Democrats who say, thank goodness we can move on now because Noem is no longer in there. And now let's give money to DHS because it's got a new leader. Bullshit, y'all. Throw that argument right out the window. Do not accept that. As soon as we get substantive changes to the secret police force that is terrorizing our country, then we can talk about funding. But do not tell me, oh, we're going to give the money for the secret police force to a different fascist collaborator. Therefore, you should give it to us now. That doesn't fly with me. So be on the lookout for that argument. I believe it will be coming. But also for today, feel some joy, y'all. Feel some sense of accomplishment. Allow yourself a minute to appreciate that pressure works, organizing works. The work that we're doing is meaningful and it's having immediate impact. Congrats, everybody. Leah, I'm going to turn to you for a little bit of the darker side of the headlines now, though.
Yeah, you gave me the hard stuff.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
you really
got
did.
the tough stuff.
Yeah, well, so in a way less positive note, we're going to talk about what has happened over the last week in the war on Iran, the escalating regional conflict that we are now part of, that we have been put into by the Trump administration. I am not going to spend all this time talking about exactly how bad it is. It is horrifying. It is illegal, immoral, insane. It is setting the region on fire. It is inflicting unfathomable suffering on innocent civilians. It's putting American lives at risk. I'm going to try and offer a little bit of framing about how we got here and what do we do and what are our levers right now. I think it's important to understand that in the context of, this is coming in the context of a series of escalating acts of international aggression that Trump has largely felt have kind of worked out for him. He got away with airstrikes on Iran last year. He largely felt like his strike on Venezuela, kidnapping Maduro, produced some things that he was pretty satisfied with. And now he has gotten us into something that is not just a round of airstrikes or a covert operation, but a terrifying, sprawling regional war with massive human and economic consequences. This isn't an authoritarian playbook move too, right? They push. If they don't see resistance, they escalate. When they feel out of control, they escalate to try to regain the initiative. You cannot separate the fact that Trump's political capital in the U.S. has been declining rapidly from the fact that he is now increasingly aggressive and has gotten us into a shocking and horrifying war abroad. Now, let's talk about pushback. We're going to need to hold two things. The first is that up until now, it is very real that Congress has largely abdicated its role in foreign policy and national security. It is also true that there are, in fact, really important things that Congress can and should do right now. And they're not going to do them without pressure from the outside. So first, the war powers resolution process. The Senate has already voted on legislation calling the question on the war. The House is going to vote today, most likely, in a matter of hours, on the same legislation. Or on
today, Thursday.
Yeah, the House is going to vote Thursday on the same thing. This is a moment in which every member of Congress, every senator goes on the record on their position. We were able to hold the entire Democratic Senate caucus except for John Fetterman. John Fetterman, on notice on any number of fronts. We need to have the same level of unanimity in the House. People need to understand that this war their vote on this war is of generational significance comparable to the vote on the Iraq War back in 2003. This is how important it is. Second, this war is insanely expensive. That means the administration is going to ask for money for it. We are hearing it could cost $1 billion a day, that a supplemental request for Congress for about $50 billion could come in. That is money that is not going to healthcare, to education, to any of the programs that Donald Trump has gutted. We need to be crystal clear with our representatives that a vote to fund the war is a vote for the war. We are seeing a bunch of Democrats who have been opposed to the war get squishy on this position. And so we need them to understand that their base is not going to be interested in technicalities about how you voted against the war before you gave Donald Trump the check for the war, okay? Got to hold that line collectively. And then third, Republicans are sneaky. They have immediately tried to weaponize this war to demand that Democrats give in on DHS funding. As you remember, we are currently in a standoff on DHS funding. Democrats are not willing to vote for ICE and CBP cash without massive reforms. Republicans are refusing to do that. Now they are claiming that because the president started a war in the Middle East that nobody wants, suddenly it is an emergency and that they need to greenlight funds for a mass deportation agenda that nobody wants. And we've got to make sure collectively that nobody buys that and continue to hold Democrats firm on refusing to give in there. Now,
can I just say, Leah, on that note, one of the arguments that I'm hearing, including from some Democrats who are currently standing strong with us, is Democrats are going to be blamed should something happen because DHS funding is not just CBP, it's not just ICE, it's also the TSA and it's other agencies that support disaster preparedness and disaster response. Here's what we need to be really clear about. It is the current Democratic position that they are willing to fund those pieces. If Republicans allow us, we will do a vote. We will take a vote and support funding those other pieces of the DHS funding bill, but we will not support funding CBP and ICE and the secret police force and the detention camp construction force that is terrorizing our country right now. That is a tenable position. It is Republicans right now who are blocking the funding for those other parts of the bill, not Democrats.
100%, 100%. So the theme of today's segment is call. Your Democrats need to hear from you yesterday. They need to hear we got to stand strong on the DHS legislation. Yep. We need a vote no on the war powers resolution. And absolutely under no circumstances should you be giving Donald Trump a blank check for this war that he has started on all of our behalves.
That's right. I'm going to add a couple more action items for this week that folks can take that following up from things that we were discussing last week. One was we were talking about this campaign from the regime to construct all of these, you call them concentration camps, call them deportation camps or detention camps, call them what you want. It's egregious what they're doing. The conditions within these camps are horrific. And they're going into blue states, they're going into red states, they're going to rural communities, they're going to urban and suburban communities. It's all over. It's really shocking how much of an investment there is. And one of the other surprising things here, as we covered last week, is local efforts to push back have been successful. It turns out, even if you are a Trump Republican, you don't want a concentration camp in your backyard. That's not something that you're looking for. So even in a place like Tennessee, with deep red representation at the state and the federal level, pressure has worked to stop the construction of these camps. So we polled, as we sometimes do after these calls, Indivisible members asking, how do you want to be engaged in this fight against the detention camps? Want to reflect back to you that poll so you know we're not asking you questions just for the sake of asking you questions. We ask questions because we want to know, is this a place where it's helpful for Indivisible National to get involved and help you take action? And the basic readout of the poll was, yeah, y'all want to be involved in this. About 20 to 25% of y'all are already involved in some way in these fights.
Amazing.
That's awesome to hear. Looking at the poll, another 63-ish% say, yeah, I want to be involved, but I don't really know how, and I'm looking for more information. So this is a helpful signal to us at Indivisible National. What it tells us is we need to spin up more resources for folks to plug directly in. Just to say what I heard from those polls, we got a ton of responses. People are interested in showing up in person, going to protest rallies, vigils. You want to be contacting your members of Congress or your state and local level officials, but you want to know, what are you contacting them to do and what action can they take? Also, a lot of interest that we've talked about here in targeting the corporate enablers, banks, landlords, real estate firms, etc. And just a lot of interest in more information about how do we not just absorb this information as yet another horrific thing Trump is doing, but to actually get information that can fuel our action. That's our bias as well at Indivisible. So stay tuned. We will be having more coming out. And if you join these calls or you go to indivisible.org, you'll be able to find action items soon. We're on the verge of having somebody come on board to lead all of this work for us. So you can expect a lot more coming out of us pretty soon. Related, I heard a lot last week and have heard it in previous months about the terrorizing that ICE is doing on college campuses. They're not just going to daycare centers. They're not just going to churches. They're not just going to courthouses. They're also lying to get into college campuses and into dorm buildings, which is shocking, except it's not shocking. This is the exact kind of thing that ICE and CBP do. Recently, a Columbia student just last week was abducted by ICE agents who lied to get into the dorm. Mom Donnie had to intervene to get her released. we have action on this coming up next week. Literally next week, we're doing a big national call with some partners specifically on organizing around higher education and colleges. If you are an alum or are you concerned about your college or your kid's college not taking the right approach to this moment, you should join us. So next week, March 11th, that's a Wednesday, we're doing a big national call that is, again, an action-oriented call about what we can do together on this. Highly recommend you check it out. Again, indivisible.org to join up. And the last thing, last but not least, y'all, it is March of 2026. You know what happens in March of 2026? Do you remember, Leah, what happens in March of 2026?
It's our anniversary.
It is actually our anniversary. I think that's not what everybody's going to be celebrating, though. It is No Kings 3. No Kings 3. That was good, Leah.
I was just in case I was being tested there.
Our anniversary is in a couple weeks, but No Kings 3 is in 3 weeks. No Kings 3, which now, as of talking right now, has more than 2,000 events nationwide. There are more joining every single day. Y'all, we are in cheerlead mode. We are in cheerlead mode right now. I hope everybody listening to the podcast, everybody on the Zoom call is in cheerlead mode as well. The current pace that we're on is we have more events registered now for No Kings 3 than we had at this time for No Kings 2. Before then, Leah and I will celebrate our anniversary. We got together around, this is very nerdy in DC circles, around the passage of the Affordable Care Act. It was a very emotional weekend. We were both working on Capitol Hill. And then after the Affordable Care Act passed, Leah and I started dating. So we have a lot of things to celebrate in March, but I think more people will be celebrating No Kings 3. So please, if you have not done it yet, go to nokings.org, find the event near you. And here's a goal here's a tangible goal I will give to you. Find 3 people who did not go to No Kings 2, 3 people in your life who did not go to No Kings 3, and let them know that you are going to this No Kings and you would like them to come with you. We are trying to build this up to be the biggest possible. That's only possible if every single one of us is our own little organizer in our own community, wherever that is. So please, please, please help us build this up. More to come from us on that as well. Leah, we have taken up a lot of time though. Should we get into the discussion?
Let's do it.
Okay. As a reminder for folks on the Zoom, you can just ask a question. For folks on the podcast who are like, where these questions come from, they came from people who attended the Zoom. So you can ask a question and vote, and then we answer them. The very top question asked comes from Petra. My Indivisible group is struggling a bit with your toolkit statement. A core principle behind all No Kings events is a commitment to nonviolent lawful action. No civil disobedience is allowed at No Kings events. Please clarify difference, if any, between non-cooperation and civil disobedience. Wasn't Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat an act of civil disobedience? Wasn't John Lewis's march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge civil disobedience? I have John Lewis right over my right shoulder right now. Wasn't Al Green holding a sign at the State of the Union an act of civil disobedience? Leah, this is a great question about...
This is a great question.
And I think I'm interested, Leah, in your take both on the technical definition, but also how are we thinking about various tactics in this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it is a good question because there's some relationship, but they are in fact different concepts, right? So non-cooperation is kind of a broad umbrella. It is any kind of refusal to participate in or go along with or comply with a system or an action or an order or any part of existing, like how you are expected to show up in society. It could be a lot of different versions of non-cooperation are legal, right? A boycott is an act of non-cooperation. If we're all not shopping at Target because of their compliance with the administration, that is an act of non-cooperation. A student walkout is an act of non-cooperation. A lot of different actions, from big to small, can be withdrawals of some kind of labor or resources or active support from the regime. And also civil disobedience is, a subset of that, which is some sort of act of protest or act of kind of publicly, like violating a law or an order or a policy in order to protest or push for change, right? What I would say here is when it comes to something like No Kings, we are trying to we're executing a specific tactic where we are asking people to come out in a large-scale popular show of defiance via a mass mobilization. And we want to have really clear expectations about what is and is not part of the No Kings kind of container and vehicle so that we can attract the broadest number of people who understand what they are coming out for. That doesn't mean that it's not, that it's the only thing that's happening or that, we're the only group that's doing something, right? There are definitely going to be other entities that might do civil disobedience as part of a broader strategy. That's, kind of the broader ecosystem. What I would say is, definitely understand some of the roles for civil disobedience. Ezra and I have, taken arrests in protest of various policies in the past over DACA's removal.
We got arrested both in the Trump Trump term and in Biden's term. I think both times. Yeah.
Right. And also, there's a difference between kind of like a specific act of civil disobedience as part of a campaign and a strategy versus the large scale mass popular opposition moment where we're asking literally everyone to kind of come out and show together that we are opposing the Trump administration. And that's what No Kings is really about.
I do think I think that the idea of No Kings as a tactic within a suite of tactics that feed into a strategy that help us achieve our goal is helpful for me. I'm crazy proud of No Kings. I think it's very important that we make No Kings as big as possible. And I will be the first to say, it's not all we need. It's not all we need. It's not, we need to build on it. And one of our main goals coming out of No Kings 3 is actually to build on top of it additional tactics as we head into what everybody believes is going to be a very rocky midterm election, not because we're not going to win. I think we're going to wipe the floor with those regime folks, but because they're going to pull some dirty tricks. We saw this in Texas just this week with the Republicans pulling some dirty tricks. I think that is a dress rehearsal for what we're going to see. No Kings is a great way to pull more people in the movement. And then what do we do with those people? We train them up on additional tactics. Got a question from Lynn. As former staffers, do you know how effective it is to sign and send the pre-filled letters to lawmakers we get in our inboxes? Are some sources more legit than others? Does it make any difference to edit with one's own words, or is it simply recorded as received? If short on time, what's the most impactful? Donating, calling, writing, petitions, signing, etc. Lynn, I love this question. This is like right at the heart of Indivisible's founding, which was when we wrote the original Indivisible guide, we tried to cut through all the bullshit and say, look, we're former congressional staffers and you don't hold that against us, but here's from our perspective, what is effective when it comes to pushing your member of Congress. So we've got a lot of things that we normally say on this. Leah, the floor is yours. I'm probably going to have some thoughts too.
Yeah. So the very short rule of thumb that we have on this stuff is, stuff that takes time and money, and the more time and money, the better, the more notice you're going to get, right? Or resources in general, not just money. But like an office visit is going to get more attention than a call. A call is going to get more attention than a petition. Generally speaking, like the way that congressional offices are kind of registering whether something is a big deal is how many people care enough to take the time to contact them and how strenuously do they do so around something. And so in general, I would say if you can do a call versus a form letter, do the call. It's a little bit easier. I will just be honest, they both get recorded via the same vehicle. It's just that the call gets recorded immediately, whereas the actual kind of process of having the form letter go in and show up in the tally that they use to figure out how many people contacted their office about a specific issue might be a little bit more delayed. I would say it's not like a strong preference one way or the other, but that's my best take.
Here's how I would dissect this issue.
Yeah.
First, you need to assess something real, which is, does your elected official give a shit about your private opinion? Many of them don't. Ted Cruz doesn't care what you have to think personally. Like, that does not affect Ted Cruz's thinking. Mark Wayne Mullen, good example of another one. If you call Mark Wayne Mullen's office and leave a polite voicemail or message with an intern where you say, I would like you to stop supporting a secret police force, he doesn't care about that, right? Your Democratic member of Congress is actively tallying up, especially on tough votes. So when Leah was talking earlier about we need to keep Democrats together on the DHS funding vote, or we need to keep them together on not funding Trump's illegal war with Iran, the Democrats don't know necessarily where their constituents are. And every single day, they will get a tally of who all called in, who all sent letters in, who all in some way voiced their opinion in a way that could be tracked. For those people, I think a private message is totally fine and can be quite good. What I would recommend if you were sending a private message in, when you call, keep in mind, the person answering the phone is probably an unpaid or poorly paid intern or junior staffer. They're taking a lot of calls in. You want your message recorded. So be polite, be nice, give them your name and address so that they know you're a constituent. If you're not a constituent, it doesn't make sense to call them. They just throw those messages away. Sorry, it's true. I don't want you wasting time. And then ask for a response. Ask for a response because you can get a response. They can send you a letter. They can send you an email. You want that. And the reason why you want that is because if Bobby, the intern, didn't actually write down your note, just said, thank you for your call, then your message isn't being recorded. I would also politely ask for who are you talking to so that you can say next time you call, hey, I was talking to Bobby. I never received any kind of communication. Just want to make sure that your boss got my message. So that's if you've got a member who you think actually cares what the constituents think. And that's disproportionately, it's going to be Democrats and it's going to be Republicans who are in really tough re-elections because they're going to be very curious where their constituents are. Then there are the whole other category, folks, who maybe these are some Democrats, but largely it's going to be Republicans and Republicans in safe seats. They aren't going to respond to private communication. They are possibly going to respond if there is a visible representation of constituents being angry at them and if they are large enough in their own community. So a key decision point that you've got to make in your advocacy is, do these people actually care what I think? And then if they do, great, you can call privately. And if they don't, you should think about how you raise more of a ruckus. That could be op-eds, that could be in-district events, that could be working in other ways to visibilize the constituent discontent. I would shy away from petitions in general. I would just personally on your own, write your own message, make your own call. Petitions that use anybody as an intermediary, I wouldn't recommend it. You feel free to do it if your floats your boat, but I personally would rather have a one-to-one relationship with my representatives. Love that question, Lynn, and love covering individual tactics. If anybody else has questions about individual tactics, we're all about trying to make advocacy actually impactful and not lead you down roads that are just don't work out. Karen asked a good question, and I'm really happy because I got something wrong last week on this and happy to have the chance to correct. Karen asks, after the Anthropic versus U.S. government Pentagon Hexeth explosion, will Indivisible encourage AI users to boycott OpenAI's ChatGPT and Musk's AI's Grok in favor of Anthropic's AI Claude? In the midst of the Iran war, Epstein files, ISIS illegal activities, election suppression, etc., I fear there's not enough attention being driven to the world's greatest existential threat. This is Karen from Indivisible Greenwich. Leah, I'll give you a first shot at this, but also happy to eat crow a little bit on what I said last week.
Well, why don't you start by eating crow and then we can go into it.
So what there was breaking news during the last What's the Plan that while Anthropic was initially refusing to go along with the Department of War with Hexeth's demands, it looked like they might be making some changes to their policies and bowing down to the demands. It turns out that was mostly not true, and so I said that there was a shift in policy, but relatively unimportant compared to what Hexeth was demanding. That red lines that Anthropic had and other AI companies previously had as well was, these are pretty egregious red lines, y'all. No killer robots and no mass surveillance of Americans. Those are the two things. So the two main red lines Anthropic had: no killer robots fueled by AI, no mass surveillance driven by AI of Americans. They refused to do this. Hexeth tried to bully them into not requiring additional language that would constrain the federal government's use of this technology. Anthropic refused to bow down, and immediately Sam Altman with ChatGPT said, "Hey, we'll do it. We're good. We're happy to do that. We want the contract." Now, it's a little bit unclear exactly where this is all shaking out. It's not like there is one hero of this story and one villain of this story, although I think Elon Musk and Grok are a pretty good villain. I've never used Grok, and I haven't used Twitter in quite some time because they are a fascist enterprise in support of a fascist regime. I think you could have some plausible deniability about ChatGPT up until really last week. And that really broke it for me. I enjoyed ChatGPT. I thought it was like a flawed but useful tool. I think there are a lot of things that it's not good for, but some things it is actually useful for. And I was a user of ChatGPT. No more. I can say I am not using ChatGPT. I am now using Claude. I would recommend people do dig into this more because I do think it's somewhat complex. Anthropic is also engaged in some ways in the war effort in Iran, and there's some disagreement about what exactly Chat and Sam Altman have agreed to. But for my purposes, I can report out I'm not using Chat anymore. I am using Anthropic. I would never use Grok or anything that Elon Musk is behind. Leah, any pushback on Leah and I actually haven't transferred Leah over to anything either. So curious what your opinion is right now, Leah.
So let me answer it from the Indivisible side, which is to say that we are looking at this and we're trying to figure out whether there's a viable specific campaign here. I think I would share the basic point of like, obviously, once a company has affirmatively announced that they're going to help the U.S. or the Department of Defense spy on Americans, you should probably not give them your private data. So that's kind of just an obvious point. And also, one of the big challenges that we've had over the last year is that the sheer number of companies who are performing horrifying acts of complicity with this regime so vastly outstrips the number of strategic campaigns to penalize that kind of compliance that we can successfully run at any given time. Like, so often over the last year and a half, it's been kind of like, maybe we should just make a list of the companies that aren't doing that. And it's like one or two, right? And so the standard for us for like, do we actually launch a boycott or a strategic campaign or something that really focuses in on a corporate enabler has to be like a full theory of the case, whereby what we collectively have as people power successfully compels some kind of change in policy, some kind of consequences for regime compliance, an actual tangible theory of the case. And so we're looking at it. We will continue to track and follow up on with you. And also, we're not prepared to launch anything like officially at this time.
Always strategic. Thanks, Leah.
Oh.
Melissa Perales-Ax from
and sorry, and I will just note, I do think it's also just worth noting, there is the specific question of whether AI is collaborating in order to support U.S. Department of Defense in spying on Americans or in bombing other countries, and then there's also just like a bunch of other ethical issues around data centers, around environmental usage, around the theft of intellectual property. Like there's a lot more here than just like good guy, bad guy. This is actually just like a massive evolving set of challenges, regulatory issues, labor issues that are going to need to be tackled in a more holistic way.
I'm seeing a lot of people quote Jess Craven's post on ChatGPT. I haven't seen it yet, but I think the world of Jess, so would recommend you check out Jess's work too. We're going to be digging into this more. Unfortunately, this is a developing and accelerating issue. I think our elected officials are largely totally ill-equipped to tackle it as a regulatory matter. Many of them do not understand how it works at all. And it's going to require a lot more engagement from all of us to understand what the threat is and what we can do about it. I do think the data centers piece is a really interesting piece and one place where we've seen a lot of activity from Indivisible groups. The data centers being constructed are deeply unpopular, and similar to the concentration camps that are being constructed, there are opportunities to successfully advocate against them. So we have seen Indivisible groups across the country engage in those fights. We are very interested in those fights as well. And that's separate from these other questions about which of the AI companies are better or worse and what is the specific regulatory regime we would like to see. Okay, back to Melissa's question. As things are starting to ratchet up even more, we've noticed the language being used at our rallies also is our security marshals typically try to keep folks from engaging with counter-protesters, but we also know we have to support free speech. Any advice or best practices on how to deal with this? We are considering printing out cards to give to people that are getting out of control that reinforce our commitment to peaceful protest. But how do we get people to understand telling someone to F off will only encourage violence? Oh, this is a good practical question too. Thanks, Melissa.
I mean, I guess my first response is I think you start by thinking about the container you're creating, the vibes you're creating, and the kind of expectations you're setting for people heading in. We're obviously going to be doing a lot of training up front in advance of No Kings. If you are hosting an event, you have already been invited to be part of the security and de-escalation training process that we've got. So there's intensive resources available for anybody who's involved in hosting around some of the best practices for de-escalation, some of the best practices for dealing with situations situations like this. I would also encourage you to think about, the overall vibe that you're creating, right? Are you encouraging people to come with inflatable costumes? Are there, is it a family event? Are there people with dogs? Like the kinds of things that signal this is a space in which people are welcome and are supported, and also socially kind of discourage escalation can be really helpful here.
I will just very practically recommend that you take our de-escalation training. So we offer
that would
a
be
lot.
simpler.
We can answer in short here, but I would recommend anybody that is holding, whether it's a No Kings rally or a different rally in their community, just get trained up on it. There are basic principles to how to make this go better for you. I think one of the reasons why we've been so successful putting together 3 of the largest nonviolent protests in American history with few, if any, incidents reported out of them is because, one, y'all are awesome and the people putting on these events are great, but 2, people are taking this de-escalation and safety very seriously, and there are just basic rules of the road how you can do that. We have entire training set out to do it. If you go to nokings.org, you'll see some of the trainings there, or go to indivisible.org, you can find them there as well. We're doing these trainings from now until No Kings, or you can watch a pre-recorded one. But I would hesitate to give you a short answer when there's good full training out there that's going to help you out. We've got Joe from Deciding to Win. Joe asked, Deciding to Win, a study of why Democrats lost the 2024 election, argues persuasively that Democrats will continue to lose elections if they do not appeal to moderate voters. Do you consider Indivisible to be a progressive or moderate-leaning organization? And how do we broaden our appeal to moderate voters so they are included in our activism? We're just full of great questions right now. I'm loving this.
A lot of things here.
Leah, first take on this?
Yeah. So first off, I just want to level set. I think there is an entire cottage industry of people in DC who get really nice salaries to argue forever and ever about how those darn lefties lost the 2024 election. This is just an entire industry of people who are regularly producing more content, arguing about, a set of key allegations, right? It's about that trans ad that Trump ran in Pennsylvania. It's about, how Kamala Harris answered a form in 2019. It's about all of these things that are, intended to substitute for any real reflection about how we ended up structurally in the position in 2024 of having a large population of people frustrated with democratic governance. And I think you see when you look at the the DNC's failure to ultimately release an autopsy, when you look at all of these reports, none of which even touch the basic question of whether maybe the administration's policies on the Gaza genocide had something to do with losing some of those voters. I think you've got to actually say people here are trying to relitigate an old left versus right fight instead of actually looking for the deeper challenges within the Democratic coalition that led to such a disappointing outcome in 2024. So that's my first reaction to Deciding to Win. It's been a little while, I think, since I read that one, but there's an entire set of people, Third Way and, Searchlight, all of these entities that really just spend all of their time trying to relitigate instead of putting forward anything that actually looks like an affirmative moderate agenda, or maybe helping us out in the fight against fascism, which is kind of ongoing, guys. I don't know if you've noticed. So that's my little rant before we go to the question of what actually Indivisible is and how we characterize ourselves. Do you want to take it from there, Ezra? I'm going to have more, but...
Oh, I was going to go on my little rant too.
Yeah.
So I'm really tired, can I just say, of this discussion of too moderate or too progressive, and that being presented as the key question that the Democratic Party is facing right now. I am a progressive. We've organized a lot for progressive values, and also we've been involved in enough campaigns where I have come to the belief that the number one problem facing the Democratic Party is not have they adopted X policy that is my preferred policy or Y policy that is the corporate Democrats' preferred policy. It's that people don't trust the Democratic Party at all. They view the Democratic Party as feckless and corrupt and not going to deliver. The brand of the Democratic Party is in the toilet. The Democratic Party's brand is so bad that the approval rating for the party is lower than the Republicans' approval rating, is lower than Trump's approval rating. And I understand here where I agree with this comment is we do not have enough people on our side, and we need to get more people on our side. Where I disagree is this presentation of the American public as existing on this ideological left-right spectrum. And so it just matters where you draw the line ideologically. A friend of mine from my early days in politics, David Brockman, is a political scientist over in California. And he had a piece a decade or so ago saying, I think that the headline was, "Nobody is more moderate than moderates." And it's because when you look at what is a moderate as defined in the literature, you know who's a moderate? Somebody who believes abortion should be illegal in all cases and that billionaires should be taxed out of existence, because they have a very right-leaning view and a very left-leaning view. And so in the data, they look like a moderate. I think if what we're doing right now is successful, we should be speaking to a broad supermajority group of people. And I guess you might call it moderate language I would use is, you know what is not moderation? Launching an unconstitutional illegal war with Iran that is deeply unpopular and costs the American people $1 billion a day. You know what's not moderate? A secret police force that invades states and communities and murders Americans. You know what's not moderate? Jacking up the prices for Americans with tariffs that then you funnel the money from into your own coffers. You know what's not moderate? Taking $200 million and running ads all around the country to boost your own name recognition so you can run for Republican presidential nomination in a couple of years. Like, the debate, though, here isn't left versus right. It's fascist versus democracy. And we can draw a really big circle around that right now and pull a whole bunch of people over to our side. And we should be doing that. I think this argument, though, isn't about today. I actually don't think this is about today. I think this is an early version of the fight that we're going to be seeing after the midterms, because after the midterms, what you're going to be seeing are a dozen presidential contenders out there arguing for, I have the vision for the future of the Democratic Party, and you should invest in me because, one, my ideas are best, and two, I'm most likely to win. And that's what the debate's going to be about. And I'm all for that debate once we get there. But right now we have a fascist in the White House who is launching illegal wars and terrorizing Americans and crashing our economy. I'm going to focus on that for at least the next 8 months until we crush them in the midterms and win back a little bit more power.
I would also, while we're just throwing different variations that are not just about the left-right spectrum, but are about other ways of understanding voters, I think it's a mistake to understand 2024 primarily in terms of left versus right versus establishment versus anti-establishment. Trump did a very good job of consolidating the anti-establishment vibe, which is completely maddening if you have object permanence and remember anything about his previous presidency. But it's true. People who were dissatisfied with the status quo went for Trump. That was a big part of his coalition. Now, that is not a stable coalition, okay? Because a lot of those people went on to be dissatisfied with him pretty fast. And also, it's really important that we learn a lesson from that, because when Democrats are perceived as people who are showing up as the defenders of the status quo, who are telling you that things are okay when you know things are not okay, then you're going to lose people. And that's especially true when we're looking at younger people who start with a much higher level of skepticism of the established order than maybe some of your older voters. So I think it's important to name that a lot of the things that these like retrospectives, autopsies, et cetera, tend to miss is they're trying to fit this into a really clear policy spectrum when it's actually more about, like, are you going to challenge the system or not?
I think if you remember nothing else, remember Leah's point and not my point, because I think that's the most important point right now, the anti-establishment versus establishment. I think that is driving American politics right now more than anything else, which is one of the reasons why I think primaries right now are really important. Putting aside the ideological positions of the people winning these primaries in the Democratic primaries, it is going to be very difficult for us to rehabilitate the Democratic brand if the exact same damn people who drove us into this ditch are making the pitch for driving us out of the ditch. And so you either change leaders or you try to make the argument that Chuck Schumer isn't that bad. You should give him more power again. Please vote for us. That's a hard argument to make, even if you've got the best policy positions that you're arguing for.
I am realizing that we went on an extended rant about the Deciding to Win report and did not actually answer Joe's question. So I am going to quickly circle back to the question of how Indivisible describes itself, which is to say we consider ourselves a progressive organization. And also we believe in a moment like this where you have an authoritarian trying to consolidate power. It is incumbent on everyone across the political spectrum to really be reaching to your left and to your right and to trying to build the biggest possible anti-authoritarian coalition you can. And that the measure of how serious you are about that is that you're actually working with people that you do not agree with on a regular basis, because it's not going to, if we had enough people, we'd have enough people. It's not going to work unless we reach out and bring in more folks. And that means really focusing on places where there's a pain point in someone's life, where they're scared or angry about something, where we can reach people who maybe haven't felt like politics is for them, maybe haven't seen things from a traditional ideological standpoint, and pull them into our side. When we talk about ICE terrorizing our communities, when we talk about tax cuts to the rich while we're all losing our healthcare benefits, these are efforts to reach out to folks who collectively may not be bought into the political system, but might be if they actually have somebody in their community standing up for values they care about and issues that are real in their lives.
Hell yeah, Leah. Okay, on that note, we're finally going to get to the next question, but that was a good question, Joe. Appreciate it. Bryony from Indivisible Brooklyn. How can we make sure we use No Kings 3 to onboard as many people as possible nationwide into ongoing organizing, protests, boycotts, strikes, etc.? How can we share strategies across geographies? In New York City, for example, we are planning to have groups host in-person social celebration gatherings on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to have fun, immediate ways for new folks to connect. We are learning from emergency preparedness and response experts who say that potlucks and block parties are the key to success with hyperlocal organizing. Is there a way Indivisibles can share strategies and effective ways to build our movement? Bryony, this is brilliant. It's not just a question. You're full of good information here, and you're hitting on something that we hope does indeed happen. The goal is two things. One, the largest protest in American history, which I believe we will achieve. And two, massive numbers of people who then get plugged in to ongoing organizing work. And so your question is, okay, yeah, but tactically, then how do we do that in the best way to get our hooks into these folks and start organizing? Leah?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. And we are working on some things to see this from the national side in terms of calls to action, in terms of some pre-trainings that we're going to support for hosts and organizers. Not quite ready to share all on that, but stay tuned. We are hoping to roll out some stuff that maybe we can collectively do together. But I would say do not wait for us. What I would recommend is if you have the group capacity to do this, you got the team that's working on putting on the No Kings event. Also designate some set of people who are in charge of planning the event that happens a couple of days after No Kings or the weekend after No Kings, in which you're going to invite the new people in for an onboarding session, and then have 3 people who are at your rally who literally their job is to be going around with a clipboard, making sure that everybody who's willing to sign up has signed up, and maybe they've got some stickers that they're giving out so that people will actually talk to them. Think about creatively, how do you actually have as many people who are showing up to No Kings have some form of being reached afterwards? QR codes, clipboards, like raffle, if you put your name in, all of the normal tactics for trying to actually get some way of following up with people. And then think about a couple of different containers that you can invite those folks into in a short time horizon afterwards, so that when you get people who maybe it's their first rally or maybe they went into No Kings once, but they don't know what else they're supposed to do, they have a sense of like, oh, I could drop by that potluck. I could drop by that Ice Watch training. I could go to that house party where we're going to talk about how we protect the election. All of those things are opportunities for us to just give somebody who's, maybe on the border and like they could just go home and not do anything until the next big mass mobilization. But they might move if they got an invitation or outreach while they're freshly inspired by the most recent event.
It's great. I hope everybody is thinking as hard about this as you are. This is a key goal. I think this is a key goal. One of the challenges for us is also what do you flow into from No Kings? So at the national, at the local level, there's a question of how do you welcome new people in an effective way and then get them into your group. And at the national level, No Kings 3 is not going to be the last of the work together. It's not like No Kings 3 was successful, folks. We won. See you next year. We have to keep building from now until November. So we are trying to do our best to give a national architecture to that work too. So when folks ask, okay, what are we doing next? There's at least something that they can plug into that everybody else around the country is going to be plugging into as well.
One other thing I will just add is that there's thinking about this for your group, and then there's also thinking about other groups in your coalition, in your area, who you're partnering with. Do they know that they're welcome to show up and table at No Kings? Are they invited to do some membership building themselves? Reach out to your local immigrant rights organizing group and ask them, hey, do you want volunteers? Would you like to collaborate with us? I've heard from really successful Indivisibles. I'm going to shout out Indivisible Austin. I think they did a big kind of volunteer recruitment fair at the last No Kings where a bunch of different partner organizations were invited to table to bring people on board. This is the kind of thing that can both build community within your own group and also build your ties to the broader progressive ecosystem. And that's really powerful.
Indeed. Peter's got a good practical question here, too, on advocacy. Peter from Indivisible San Pedro, what's the best plan to persuade our Democratic members of Congress who claim to oppose the war with Iran, but are now making obedience noises? Obedience noises. I think that's the first time I've heard that phrase. I like it. Obedience noises. I don't want to hear obedience noises about supporting a supplemental funding bill to pay the escalating cost of Trump's feckless adventure in Iran. As reported by Politico today, Senators Jack Reed in Rhode Island, Peters and Slotkin, both in Michigan, and Kane in Virginia, are all considering the need to support our troops and replenish our arms stockpile. Democratic senators on the Armed Service Committee report that Trump's war is costing $1 billion a day to finance Trump's nation-building regime change war with Iran. Peter, this is the question right now. Yeah. So when Leah opened up earlier that we were worried that Democrats might say, I'm against this darn war. Trump is just the worst. And here's billions of more dollars to wage this war however you like. I think that is a real danger. What they are counting on is you not being organized and angry enough. I guarantee you, if there are enough people organized in Michigan, in Rhode Island, in Virginia, making very clear that this is a deciding vote. This is a generationally important vote, similar to the vote for the Iraq War. You are voting for an autocrat's illegal war. You are voting to fund it, and that's on you. Kane is not up for re-election right now. Peters and Slotkin are not up for re-election right now. Jack Reed is up for re-election in Rhode Island. Kane probably wants to win again in the future in Virginia. Peters is retiring, and Slotkin reportedly wants to run for president. It's going to be difficult to win any national office if you're supporting Donald Trump's illegal war. The question is, does this become the defining vote for them? Do they understand that constituents are angry and organized or not? And that's on us. This is why pressure is important right now. So I would highly recommend you not limit your pressure, especially in those states, to just calls, not just polite calls where you register your opinion. I think this is a place where you should get, in nonviolent ways, loud. You should get loud and organized and make clear that this will be a problem for them politically if they side with the Republicans.
One of my all-time favorite emails from a local Indivisible group, I think this was Indivisible East Bay, had kind of a crossed out yelling and then caring very loudly at our elected officials.
Yes.
And I would encourage you to care very loudly here. This is fundamentally one of those places where people think they can make a distinction between I opposed the war. I voted for the War Powers Resolution to limit this war. And then also, I want our troops to be protected, and so I voted for this funding package, right? And actually, what we need to be really clear is that if you give Donald Trump a massive check to have this war on an ongoing basis, you are voting for the war, right? And if people understand that their base is absolutely not going to make a distinction between those two things, they will move accordingly. I think we've already seen Ruben Gallego walk his position back dramatically over the course of the day in response to backlash here. This is a very doable thing for us if we are preemptive in how we push Democrats.
That's right.
And then one other thing I will just add on this is all of the message testing that we've seen on any of this, it's not so much important for when you're reaching out to your elected officials because that's just going to be recorded as a yay, nay. But in general, when we're talking about this, it's really important to pair the overall costs of war with the fact that that is being taken from money that is not going to healthcare, money that is not going to education, money that's not going to roads, money that is being taken from things that we actually want and care about to be spent on something that we think is abominable. That is a really important part of the messaging frame that we need to have as we talk to other people about the trade-offs here.
We will send out after this call a list of links. One of those will be to resources we have specifically on this issue. If you're listening to the podcast, go to indivisible.org. It's the top issue on the website as well. This is a live campaign right now. It could move very quickly. We don't always say that. I'm saying that now. It is the time to make your voice heard and to organize as many as your friends, neighbors, allies in this work, because Democrats are trying to understand how much blowback they would get for going along with Republicans on this. And if they don't hear from us, they're going to assume, we can get away with this.
That's right.
I think we're a little bit over, but one last question, because it's on No Kings, and it's a good question to end on. Lori asks, from Mountain Action Indivisible, Aspen to Parachute, Colorado, how many No Kings 3 protests are happening worldwide that you know so far? Makes a great talking point to encourage people to join the largest protest in American history and encourage press to cover it. What I know is that there are more than 2,000 events on the map, all across the world right now. The vast majority of those are, of course, in the U.S., but they are popping up in Europe, in South America, in other places in Canada. Traditionally, we've seen them. Like I said earlier, the event registration starts taking off, especially as we get closer to the event. So I would expect the numbers to rise pretty precipitously in the coming days and couple of weeks. One of the notes about this, I think we've covered in a previous podcast, is that in places where they are a constitutional monarchy, so like in the UK or in Canada, what we've seen is that they don't do no kings, they do no tyrants, which I love. I love making it work for whatever the local political reality. Exactly. Culturally appropriate opposition to tyrannical rule. We're all about that. If you are on this call with an Indivisible international group, or not with an Indivisible group, but just internationally, you can start your own No Kings protest too. That is okay and welcome, and we will brag about it. There have traditionally been dozens of these events all across the world at the same time.
I will just say, in terms of the metrics overall, like, part of the reason we're in an ongoing process of approving events to get them on the map, and our best data so far suggests that there are about 20% more events up already than we had at this point in the registration process for No Kings 2. And similarly, with RSVPs, we're seeing a significant overperformance relative to No Kings 2 at this point in the process. So make of that what you will. All of this data is a little bit, how do you read it, especially with RSVPs, because people have so many feelings about giving their email address out on the internet these days. But all the signs we have are that, and this stands to reason, more people are really mad about what is happening now than ever before.
That's right. And so it will be the largest protest in American history. I am confident in that, because we're all going to do the work to make it the largest protest in American history. So a reminder of that action item I gave at the beginning: find 3 people who didn't show up at No Kings 1 or No Kings 2 and welcome them to your local No Kings. If you go to nokings.org, look for an event and it's not there, look, y'all, I think it's going to be an honor and a story that you tell for years to come, that you organized the protest in your community and the 250th anniversary of the founding of this country. You get to do that. You get to be part of this mass movement that just recently succeeded in getting Kristi Noem fired. So we have more victories in our future, y'all. There's more to come. Thank y'all for being here for this What's the Plan? We got a lot of work to do, but I'm feeling really optimistic right now on what we've accomplished so far and what's in our near-term future. So see you next week, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom, every Friday on the podcast. That's the plan, Leah, right?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.